very much. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me here. Thank you for the nice introduction. It was almost entirely accurate. My life has gotten better. I do not have 4 teenagers. My oldest son turned 20, so 3 teenagers. Things are better. I'm going to be brief. You have a busy schedule of events. I just wanted to be here, first of all, to say thank you for the service that you do, and I know that it's thankless and you're underpaid, but I wanted to be here to show my respect for the great work that the Township Trustees of Ohio do. In my county, we don't have a lot of townships, but we do have some, and I work with those Township Trustees very closely and respect what they do. Let me tell you what my life experience. I've been involved in public service like you have been for most of my life, ever since I got out of college. And I've been lucky, I think. First of all, I've had a good life. I've had 2 great parents that were raised in the Depression without a lot of money. Had 8 kids. I was the 7th of the 8 of those. And they taught us some pretty basic values that I think most of you probably have led your life according to the same values. And those values were hard work, you should practice your faith, you should take care of your family, but it wasn't just about how you were doing personally, financially. You also needed to spend at least part of your life doing something for the community that you live in. That's why you're Township Trustees. And that's why I got involved in local government 24 years ago when I was a member of my local Board of Zoning Appeals. And that's when I first started observing and seeing how local government works. Then I really saw government at its worst because I was a special agent with the FBI and I investigated local government in Chicago. And it has some problems occasionally. Then I came back to Ohio and I got involved in local government again. And I was a city councilman for 9 years, and then I was the mayor of my city of Lakewood. And as a city councilman, like many of you, you're really the first line of defense. You're the part of government that is closest to the people. You get the calls about the potholes or the barking dogs or whether the streets are plowed the right way. And you win elections not by running television commercials or because of super PACs or millions of dollars that have been raised. You win elections because you get to know people. Because the people that you represent know you personally, and they either trust you or they don't trust you. And if they don't trust you, you don't stay in office very long. It doesn't matter how much money you raise on the local level. If you're not representing people's interests, you don't stick around for very long. And so I did that for 12 years representing my local community. And then in 2010, again, I saw local government at its worst because we had a county form of government and people that were running county government who really just betrayed the public trust. And a couple of them are now in subsidized federal housing for the next 20 years or so. And I was asked at that time, because of my background as a county prosecutor, which I had been, and as a special agent who worked on corruption cases, to run county government. And I learned, again, a lot of lessons. I'll tell you what I've learned in all my years' experience in terms of being involved in local government. Every year at budget time, we would look at our various revenue sources, and we would try to project, like all of you try to project, what's it going to look like for the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years? And it would always be a question mark in terms of the share of state money that was going to be returned to our community through the local government fund. We never knew what the answer to that question was going to be. This is going back, and this isn't just in the last couple years, and there's people in this room, I think most people in this room know that. That uncertainty and that question about how much of our local tax money is going to be returned to local government where it's closest to the people, that question has been going on for years and years and years. Because every year we never knew the answer to a basic question. Was the state going to balance its budget by taking a greater share of the local government fund? Or was it going to return it the way it is supposed to be returned and the way that it has been pledged to be returned, not just in my lifetime, but for 80 years or more in this state? And we never knew what the answer was going to be. Now, let's talk about what's happened just in the last 3 years. I remember comments being made by some folks in state government when they were dealing with their budgetary challenges that it was time for local government to get off the gravy train. Some of you might remember those statements. Now, some of you have been involved in local government longer than I have. I started really paying attention to it, like I said, back in 1990. But I don't remember the gravy train even running back in 1990. And I can tell you, and I'm sure you had the same experience, city governments and townships were cutting their budgets significantly back in 2003 and 2004. Now, I've also heard state officials say that they're very proud that they've been able to avoid laying off employees. I wish all local governments had that opportunity. But I remember people being laid off from cities in my part of Ohio, and I think across the rest of Ohio, back in 2007. That's before the recession even hit. Now, after the recession hit in 2008, we all know what happened to tax revenues at that point in time. So you went through budget cycles in 2008, in 2009, in 2010, and you had to cut and cut and cut again. So for people to say in 2011 that local government was on a gravy train, it just factually wasn't true. I always tell people that I only thought there was a few ways to balance a budget. You can cut your spending, you can raise taxes, or you can hope that the economy grows enough so that your revenue increases. I always thought those were the only three ways to balance a budget. What happened in state government in the last few years is it was balanced another way. It was balanced by unbalancing a lot of local budgets. And you got stuck with the bill. And school districts got stuck with the bill. And counties got stuck with the bill. And they weren't always able to not cut services, or not raise taxes, or not lay people off. I faced a situation when I was mayor of my city where we had to lay off over 20% of the workforce. And the state was no help at all. Now, why do I have such a disagreement with that? It's a difference in philosophy about whose money that was in the first place. It's really important. I'm sure all of you agree that when you make decisions in life, you have, and my dad always taught me this, you have to be a student of history, or you're just going to repeat history over and over and over again. The local government fund is not something that was a gift from a previous legislature or a previous governor. It was a bargain. It was an agreement that was made when taxes were raised in the first place. And I'm talking about going way back to the 1930s when my dad was growing up, the Depression in Ohio. Ohio had a lot of financial problems when the Depression hit this country and hit this state. And the state was having trouble balancing its budgets, and so were a lot of local communities. And they decided to institute the state sales tax. But they made an agreement with local communities. And by the way, it was pushed as much by Republicans and conservatives as it was Democrats or progressives. And here's what the deal was. The deal was, yes, the state sales taxes will go up, but it will not all be spent by the central government in Columbus. It will be shared with local communities so that they can support their local services. Now, you fast forward to the early 70s, when the state income tax was instituted. Same deal, same discussion. A lot of communities were having trouble making ends meet, and the state was having trouble meeting its financial obligations, particularly when it comes to education.